Storylines, stats, and signals from a preseason win over the Philadelphia Flyers, plus, of course, a quick Jeremy Swayman update.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Wednesday, October 2nd, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my Hockey Thoughts Dad Jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. Let's get into it. A quick review of last night's game over the Philadelphia Flyers. And this season, as I've been saying, rolling out a new way to look at games. We're going to break it down, the three S's: storylines, stats. I wanted to call it sirens, but maybe not as clear as I want it to be, and signals. So the key storylines from the game, the big stats you need to know, as well as kind of what we can take away from these games and trends moving forward. Let's begin with the big storyline last night was the debut of what we believe will be the top six here in the regular season. Pavel Zacha playing with Elias Lindholm and David Pastrnak, and then Brad Marchand playing with Charlie Coyle and likely Morgan Geekie on the right side. Now this sextet was short-lived as Brad Marchand had to leave the game early due to illness. Head coach Jim Montgomery said it was something that he has been dealing with. He didn't practice the day before. He wasn't feeling good 2 days ago. He showed up prior to the game, felt better, but it just came back on the bench. 24-hour bug. Hopefully he will be fine and back and ready to go soon. As far as the top line, they had, some decent shifts, but the execution still lacking a little bit, and that's to be expected. Lindholm has been absent for a big part of training camp due to an undisclosed injury, but he did, of course, show some of that defensive and offensive prowess that he has been brought in for to play with these two guys on the top line. Montgomery said they're capable of moving the puck better and quicker and faster than what we saw, but the plays that Lindholm can make through the middle of the ice, his poise, his hockey sense, you can tell he's going to be someone that really adds to the offensive game. Morgan Geekie, of course, given an audition on the right side. Marchand has been outspoken about enjoying playing with him before. He likes the game that he brings to the table. That spot is still up for grabs. We've heard Don Sweeney say that Lysell is going to get another shot here later on in the preseason. There's still 2 games left, if you can believe it. One Thursday evening in Quebec City against the LA Kings, and then another on Saturday against the Washington Capitals. Obviously, he has a lot of work to do in order to grab that spot. You heard Andrew Raycroft on the podcast last week say the vets will always have an edge over someone coming in unless it's like a Connor Bedard or a Macklin Celebrini. You have to really show that you deserve not only that spot, but to take a roster spot from somebody else. You have Morgan Geekie, you have Matt Poitras, who is always rising to the challenge. He didn't play last night, but right now I can see him either on the second line right wing spot or playing on the third line with Trent Frederick. Justin Brazeau scored last night, and he is looking like a guy who deserves a spot, as does Tyler Johnson. We'll discuss him later on in the podcast. So, looks like the top 6 is set. We'll see if Morgan Geekie can grab that spot or not, but that's still something that we're keeping an eye on here through the remainder of training camp. Another big storyline last night was goaltending. We'll touch on Jeremy Swayman's situation later in the podcast, but Joonas Korpisalo is your opening night starter. It's already been announced. Opening night is 1 week from today, October 8th, a game against the Florida Panthers, and Korpisalo is the guy. Brandon Bussi has a leg up on Michael DiPietro for the backup role. DiPietro did not see any action last night despite dressing. Bussi got the start. He played the full 60 minutes. Very low shot volume. Only 14 shots against, but he made 13 saves for a .929 save percentage. All the saves that he made were even strength. The only time he was beaten last night was on a power play goal scored by Travis Konechny. Actually, no, sorry. That is incorrect. The goal was scored at even strength. It was a Travis Konechny goal from Matvei Michkov and Morgan Frost. So altogether, Bussi hasn't really blown me away this preseason. The one goal he did allow came off another juicy meatball of a rebound, but he did make some pretty big stops on Tuesday, including a breakaway stop against former Bruin Anthony Richard in the third period. And then he also robbed Sean Couturier to preserve what was a 2-1 lead at the time. So Bussi, he's going to be the backup as of right now. It was a pretty good Flyers lineup that they played last night. Some good offensive weapons. Bussi read the plays well, according to Jim Montgomery. He was aggressive. He was moving well. There was a flurry in the first where they missed the net, but he was there if it hit. Montgomery's assessment was. He was ready. He was reading it. The save on Richard, it was important at that moment in the game. So full marks to Bussi last night for rising to the occasion against the Philadelphia Flyers. So Marchand making his debut, but having to leave early due to illness. The apparent top 6 plus Bussi's play. Those were the key storylines from last night's game. What about some key stats and some signals, trends that we can take moving forward? We'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Hockey season is 1 week from today, and if you're looking to get Bruins tickets, I highly recommend checking out Gametime. Gametime is just a fantastic ticketing app, not just for sports events, but also for sports, comedy, theater, music near you. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks, and it makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the view from your seat. You can see in the app exactly what to expect when you arrive at the venue, and Gametime has the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off at Gametime. Thanks so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Please do subscribe if you have not already so that you do not miss a thing. It's going to be, well, it's already proving to be a pretty dramatic and story-filled Bruins season. And again, we'll touch on the Jeremy Swayman drama later on in the podcast. But what are some key stats that we can pick out from last night? I mentioned Bussi's 13 saves on 14 shots for a .929 save percentage. Very notable. Justin Brazeau also had a goal, his second of the preseason. And he is, again, in competition with the likes of Geeky, Poitras, Tyler Johnson for a spot in the lineup. And he really has looked like a guy who belongs in the lineup. He is a late bloomer, but has that size that is disruptive in front of the net, and is a guy who can put the puck in the net. He has scored at every level he's played at, including the NHL so far with the Bruins, and looks like a guy who could be your third line right winger. Just, again, more ready than a guy like Fabian Lysell, physically, defensively responsible. I should add Nikita Zadorov fed Brazeau at the net front for the primary assist. Boston's defense pretty much set, and I'm very excited about this group. It's a dynamic, responsible group, and they really helped Bussi last night with clearing up the rebounds as well as keeping the puck away from the net. Another stat I wanted to mention: a goal scored by Tyler Johnson. He had one goal on 3 shots in 14 minutes and 50 seconds of ice time. His goal came on the power play, assisted by Pavel Zacha and David Pastrnak. So he's getting prime time here with the top unit last night. And Tyler Johnson, to me, is a guy who will be a Bruin when it's all said and done. At the end of training camp, they're looking at who is going to make this team. Tyler Johnson, to me, has made a case for a roster spot. And again, referring to my chat with Andrew Raycroft, he was pretty adamant about the fact that PTOs are not easy to get. You think, oh yeah, we'll invite this guy to training camp, have this guy come in. But it's a hard gig to get, and it signals that the team wants you to be there. And also the guy sees a spot. 34-year-old looking to extend his career with a team that he had a lot of battles with as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. But he's certainly putting himself in a good spot to earn a contract at some point. We look at Danton Heinen last season. It took some time for him to get a contract for whatever reason. The Bruins, of course, still have to maneuver the cap in a way that they want to leave some space for Jeremy Swayman. But last night, playing as third line center between Trent Frederick and Justin Brazeau, he helped drive the play on probably their best line last night. According to Connor Ryan of Boston.com, 6 minutes, 39 seconds of 5-on-5 ice time. The Bruins held a 5-0 edge in shots on goal and outscored the Flyers 1-0. And then, of course, Johnson popped in the power play goal. Brazeau knocked home the feed from Zadorov for the goal. So a pretty nice night overall from Tyler Johnson. Jim Montgomery said he's gotten better through camp, and I thought he was really good last night. Quote, I thought he made some real subtle plays. I think the first 2 games he played tonight was a real good effort, not because of the goal, but because their line was the best, and Frederick Brazeau also excellent. So when we're looking also at signals, that goal, those stats, that shot advantage, the scoring advantage, really signaling that he's going to be a part of this team. We'll see where he fits in. Poitras, of course, was out of the lineup last night, but for his part, he's just trying to play his game, not trying to think about it too much or get worried or nervous. That's when you play your worst. For him, it's coming in, doing everything he normally does, trying to improve every day. So that's all pointing towards him being a member of this team. Mark Kastelic had another strong game last night for the Boston Bruins. He scored an empty netter. He also had 5 shots on goal, which was the most among Bruins players. 14 minutes and 30 seconds of ice time. He even got 15 seconds of power play ice time. He had 2 hits, no turnovers, a block, and he's really cementing himself as a mainstay on the fourth line. Last night, it was Kastelic playing with Johnny Beecher and Cole Koepke. Koepke's in there at the moment because Max Jones remains sidelined with an injury. That seemed like Jones's role to lose, but if Jones isn't ready to go, Cole Koepke has really emerged as the guy who could step in on the left side there. He had a shot on goal in 14 minutes and 45 seconds of ice time, 1 hit, no turnovers. So very nice night for that line. Face-off wise, Beecher, not very strong, only went 2 for 7, 28.6%. Charlie Coyle had a good night in the dots, 6 for 9. He was the only Bruins forward who was above 50% at the dot last night. Lindholm went 4 for 12. That's an area where the Bruins need to improve, and they didn't really do so well last night in that regard. Now, when it comes again to the blue line, that top 6 that was in there last night, that's going to be your opening night defensive group. Brandon Carlo, Hampus Lindholm, Mason Lohrei, Charlie McAvoy, Andrew Peeke, and Nikita Zadorov. And I really think that's going to be a great top 6 for the Boston Bruins. When it comes to team stats, the Bruins outshot Philadelphia 34-14. That's an area where they usually did not come out on top last season, so that's a good signal. Only won 40% of their faceoffs, however. They were out hit 2013, but that's usually a function of having the puck more than the opposition. So overall, a pretty good night for the Bruins. A lot of guys scoring. Kastelic, Coyle, Brazeau, Johnson. Those are going to be mainstays in the lineup. And really liked, what we saw from a lot of these guys. Now the Bruins have 2 games remaining. So it's kind of a make or break, last-ditch effort to try to make this opening night roster. Maybe we'll see some AHL guys come back up to get one last final impression, but it really seems as though they have their 13, 14 forwards at the moment. Their 6 or 7 defensemen. Couple goalies, obviously not the one that you want, and we'll touch on our boy Jeremy Swayman and what the latest is there here as the podcast continues. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So head over to FanDuel, check out, for example, the over-under on total points for the Bruins this season. It's set at 97.5. Put $5 on the over or the under, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed whether or not that bet hits. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Before we get to the Jeremy Swayman update, I did want to mention Sofia Jurkovic taking a leave from her position at NESN, which she announced yesterday. She had signed an extension with NESN. Couldn't be happier to continue her journey as Bruins host, but due to personal reasons, she's taking a bit of a leave to begin the season. Nothing but love and support for Sophia, who, of course, is from up here in Canada, got her start at the Score Sportsnet, and has been a fantastic addition to the Bruins broadcast. And we wish her all the best and a good leave, quick return to the Bruins broadcast. Now, speaking of Sportsnet, I was just listening to the latest from Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast this morning. His belief is that the Bruins began their negotiation stance at $6.5 million over 8 years, which is, let's be honest, criminally low for a player like Jeremy Swayman. And they have moved up to $8 million. So 8 times 8, as Cam Neely referenced at that press conference on Monday. Friedman believes Swayman began at Charlie McAvoy money, so 8 years, $9.5 million, and has perhaps moved down to around 9 or the high 8s. So still like $1 million gap to bridge there. His belief is that the Bruins are not interested in entertaining any trades, and that Jeremy Swayman's first choice is to remain a member of the Boston Bruins. But there clearly was some disruption there based on Cam Neely's comments on Monday. His agent, Louis Gross, coming out and saying that they needed a few days to kind of regroup. There's a cooling off period here, and right now, Jeremy Swayman is basically assessing whether or not he wants to remain a member of the Boston Bruins, or whether or not he's going to basically request a trade. That this situation has become untenable. The rift between the two sides has become too deep to bridge. Not just the valuation of the contract, but also just making it so public, especially after he felt alienated following last summer's arbitration process. So that's where it's at right now. Jeremy Swayman, his agent, Louis Gross, taking some time to assess what they want to do moving forward. Now, if they can agree to an 8-year deal, Friedman saying the belief is that it's kind of a clean slate. Let's just move on and see what we can accomplish together moving forward. But even if they agree to move forward and he wants to remain a Bruin, there's still that gap in valuation to bridge. He believes he's worth at least what Charlie McAvoy is making. The Bruins are moving down to the $8 million range, which would still make him the fifth highest paid active goalie. Yes, I realize Carey Price still has a high AAV. He hasn't played in quite some time, so I'm not really counting him at the moment. Does he deserve Andrei Vasilevsky money? He was paid that, I believe, prior to winning the 2 cups, but it's still, been in the Vezina conversation, all that. So again, there's still that difference, that chicken egg situation going on. Brad Marchand was asked about it yesterday. He said they all understand the situation the team and Sway are in. He said, quote, "This is part of the game. It's part of the business. It's a part that nobody enjoys. Eventually, a deal is going to get done, and everyone's going to move on and be fine." Now, let us pray that is true. Martin Biron was on TSN with Jay Onrait on SportsCenter the other night. He said the two sides might be close to a deal, but now things feel a bit more personal. They're close, but it's not really about the money right now. It's about the principle, how you've treated the player, how you're dealing with this situation. They're disappointed in Neely being so open about it. They're disappointed in, saying that $64 million was never offered by the Bruins. Biron says if it doesn't get done this week, they're going to wait a long time. And it's about the principle of the thing. Of course, the deadline is December 1st. If he's not signed prior to that date, he cannot play this season for the Bruins or anywhere, even if he were to be traded. So again, at this point, the ball is in Swayman's court, unless the Bruins come back and say, oh, fine, we'll raise the valuation. We'll go up to 8.5. See if they can meet there in the middle. Swayman's at 9. The Bruins are at 8. Does Swayman want to sign? Has this relationship been torn apart to the point of no repair? Or can they agree in the middle, 8, 8.5, get it done? Even that should be very good value for the Boston Bruins near the end of this, the contract. Anyways, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. All the storylines, stats, and signals from last night's game against the Flyers, a very encouraging 4-1 win. Also looking at Tyler Johnson getting a deal at some point. You have to weigh out the cap implications of signing him. What can they afford? How can they still get Swayman and Johnson signed? It's going to be a very interesting week, and you can stay up on all the latest here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Check out Locked On NHL Next for all the latest from around the league. And please do take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day.